Hello fellow modelers! I built legendary Ford GT from Le Mans race 1966 some times ago. But in this video, let's move to the next season. In the second and third place was this beautiful Ferrari P4. If you want this car in 24th scale, you don't have a lot of options. Available is only 30 years old kit from Fujimi. Luckily, new repackaged version from 2014 has at least some extra parts. The kit itself is lovely. It has, of course, a lot of inaccuracies, but I think I can work with that. It certainly will be fun. The parts are molded from soft white plastic with a lot of mold lines and ejector pin marks. And as a result, you need to spend some time cleaning them. I use for gluing super thin glue, which application is straightforward. That was quick. If you like modifications or improvements on your models, this video is full of them. So, for example, this front radiator. I made the whole part from scratch because the plastic one looks weird. I used threaded rod with a 3mm diameter, which has a perfect texture similar to the original one. The microelectric engraver is very versatile tool and I can highly recommend it. You can change tools for cutting, drilling, engraving or even polishing. If you want to glue metal to plastic, you can use two-component adhesive, but the easiest and fastest way is ordinary superglue. The radiator is not just some hidden detail inside of the model, but is very pronounced, so therefore I think it's worth it to make a new one. I mentioned that kit has some photo etch parts, but most of them you will not see after assembling. So another modification. In the kit are missing parts for air duct cooling system for brakes and engine, like here on the large super detailed kit from Model Factory Hero. This time I need quite complex shape for air duct, so I cannot use threaded rod. And instead I'm widening copper wire on the metal rod. The spring is quite flexible, so that you can bend it to the needed shape. If you need a small diameter of a spring, you can simply switch a rod for a smaller one. I think this is much better. Now I'm only filling gaps with a white putty. In my opinion, not all modifications are not super necessary, but you can use them as an inspiration for your projects or sketchable models. The problem with all kits is that if you have a proper photo documentation, you can see all imperfections. Therefore, if you want to build the model fast, just make the model straight from the box. The Ferrari 330 P4 is probably the best looking car ever. It is just my personal opinion, so please do not question it. I'm trying my best to make it just a little bit more detailed. Therefore, I also replace with shock absorbers. I do not have a semi-automatic lathe machine, so I use primarily plastic profiles. This kit does not have an engine. It is quite shame, but I think it is not a big deal because everything will be covered. So I only add supporting frame and again air duct cooling system for brakes. And this is interesting. I found the shape of the rear view mirrors partly wrong. And when I started searching about mirror shape, I realized that something isn't correct with the whole kit. Primarily, there are decals for number 26, which is not from Le Mans race, but from 24 Hours Daytona. And especially number 26 was on Ferrari P4, which is also in the box cover, but 412P, which was custom version owned by North American racing team. And the 412P had different shapes of air intakes, backside glass, engine and mirrors. I decided for classic P4 with a number 21. Therefore I ordered new decals from eBay. But still, first I must sculpt new mirrors. I use for this purpose 2-component epoxy putty. It isn't a professional sculpting material, but I like it. It adheres to the plastic well and it starts drying after 30 minutes. So you have plenty of time to process it. You can even smooth it with water. I use for sculpting rubber tools from the green stuff world, and also handy is this tool with a metal ball. With this, you can nicely smooth surface. After 10 hours is material rigid, and I'm making final modifications of shape with a micro-grinding tool. Primarily, I'm trying to make edges thin and smooth. I think the shape isn't still 100% accurate, but I think a little bit better than the plastic one. At least it's smaller. If you look at the car from the front, you should not see them. Thanks to Model Factory Hero references, I also realized that the whole dashboard is incorrect. The instrument panel is totally different, thus I'm sculpting a new one from epoxy putty. Okay, enough of modifications. I am unifying the whole model with a grey primer, because on the white plastic you can hardly see imperfections. If you are making some new kit from Tamiya or Aoshima, you can paint some parts separately and glue them after painting. But this kit does not fit perfectly, so I prefer glue parts together, clean seam lines and then paint them, like I did. And when the work is done, I'm finally painting the interior with a silver lacquer color. Also, you can mask parts with a masking tape, but easier is just painting details with a paintbrush and water-based acrylic color. You only need to dilute color properly and apply 2 or more layers. I make details more pronounced with a dark enamel wash. Parts painted with an airbrush and lacquer color are resilient, but parts painted with a paintbrush I rather fix with a clear lacquer varnish first. Otherwise you can chip color off to the base plastic. Now I am painting highlights with a lighter red color. The seatbelts are already included in the kit. I must say that it is much more comfortable for assembling in this 24th scale than in 48 or 72. The breaking discs from photo etch parts are helpful, but only need scratches from breaking. I glue them with a super glue on cutting wheel and imitate scratches with a rough sandpaper. So the interior and chassis are almost finished. The last part which remains is car body and also requires special care. I am replacing large air intake and trying to make a smaller one. Then I will drill holes to the cockpit air outlets. I simply fill mold lines, seam lines, but also sink marks around front lights with a white putty. And as usual, I unify the whole surface with a grey primer and let it dry properly for a few hours. Now I am sanding excess putty and removing imperfections. I'm spraying the final layer of the primer, hopefully, because you can discover even more imperfections with each layer. You can glue windshield usually after painting, but this one is slightly inaccurate, something like 2 mm gap on the both sides. I tried to heat plastic with a hairdryer and bend it to the needed shape, but it didn't work too much. So I'm gluing the plastic with a super thin glue and super glue before painting. I let the glue dry properly for 3 days and then mask the windshield with a yellow masking tape. So, finally painting. I use for car models ordinary Mr. Color lacquer diluted with leveling thinner. I got for testing new airbrush for large models with a trigger and 0.5 mm nozzle from ModelEmporium eShop. It is my first try with a new airbrush, so I was a little bit skeptical and scared, but the use is very straightforward and easy. So you need to care only about color dilution and pressure. Do not try to spray the model with one thick layer and instead paint more subtle layers. The red does not have perfect coverage properties, so therefore I sprayed 4 coats this time. If you spray a lot of color on the surface at once, it will have a tendency to become thicker around edges and turn down from a smooth surface. The result will be inconsistent and probably ugly. You can spray another layer after a few minutes, because drying time is relatively quick. The paint job isn't perfect, primarily because of color type and layer thickness. I had a mess in the color, so if I want to achieve this result, I must smooth the paint job or remove imperfections with a 3000 grit sponge sandpaper. I told you that I purchased new decals, so precisely these ones. The transparent film is on the whole surface, so you need to sharp scissors to cut them out. I decided to apply decals directly on the color, because after sanding it's nicely smooth. I had this kit in the collection already 2 years, and these shapes on the doors were the scariest. But after carbon decals on my Kawasaki H2R, this one was walk through a rose garden. You only need to apply microset decal chemical, which makes decals a little bit more elastic, and then heat decals with a hairdryer. I am quite satisfied with the result. The last but not least step is varnish. I tested different types of varnishes, even 2K, but I was not thrilled from the result. So I used for planes, AFV, ships and cars the same varnish, which is super clear free from Mr. Color. The varnish has very dense consistency, so even for my new 0.5mm nozzle, I use a lot of Mr. Color leveling thinner. Something like 4 parts of a thinner and 1 part of varnish. If you have a smaller nozzle, you need even more. And again, I'm spraying 4 thin coats, and after each one I let the varnish dry for 5 hours. After the final one, I let the dry body properly for 2 days. And this is the result. Not bad at all. But this time it is only the beginning. The decals are still raised above the surface, and varnish is not super smooth as I want. I'm sanding down 2 top varnish layers, and this way I unify decals with the surface. You can see here reflection around decals. I tested some super smooth 12,000 grit sanding water papers, but I made even deeper scratches into varnish than with this 3000 grit point sandpaper from Tamiya. I used this small block for the whole model, so entire sheet you have for 20 or more models. I recommend sanding varnish with a care, because even after 4 coats of highly diluted varnish, its final thickness only a few microns. This way I clean the whole body. I can simply remove varnish dust with water. So it's time for polishing, which is also a time-consuming process, but enjoyable. At least for me, because it is a straightforward process and you can focus on TED podcasts or audiobooks. Mr. Color varnish is not super robust, so you cannot use some paper napkin or fabric for polishing. And instead I use microfiber lens cleaning cloth, which is perfect for this purpose. Now you only need some polishing compound. I think the most accessible for modelers is Tamiya, so I use them. There are 3 types, but I use only fine and finish. You can see change under your fingers just instantly. The result after the first one looks much better, but the finish compound will cover the most of scratches. My fingers already don't like this work, so I make life easier and use microelectric engraver tool with a cotton polishing wheel. Just try to wash the wheel in the hot soapy water before each use. The dirty tool can do even more scratches than you had before. This Proxon micromod has 5000 revolutions per minute, so try to not stay in one position for too long. The heat from friction can burn the varnish. Okay, now I'm pleased with the result. You can probably see the white polishing compound in the gaps after polishing. Just please do not let it dry after polishing. It could be even quite tricky to remove it. So immediately after polishing, try to blow out the compound with an airbrush and water and let the water drops dry out. Then you can clean excess polishing compound from the surface with a microfiber claw. I received in my comment section tip about the ceramic coating. It works like a dust and UV protection. It isn't the cheapest product, but the whole bottle is again for a lot of models, so I decided to test it. The application is easy, a few drops to the microfiber claw and spread it over the surface. After 5 minutes you can remove excess liquid. You probably cannot see the difference, but it nicely makes the surface even more shinier. Primarily the windshield is now more transparent. Anyway, let's assemble the final details. I use for gluing clear parts ordinary PVA glue, which becomes transparent when it dry. And also, the PVA glue has the advantage that you can clean the excess glue with water. I have small rivets and screw heads from Kawasaki H2R, so I use the small ones for a few details. You can buy the photo etch parts separately. I found helpful wax pencil from Green Stuff World for holding and relocation small parts. The last but not least step is wheels. I am applying the water slide decals with a gold Firestone logo, which you need to use the reverse side down. I am trying to paint a thin gold line with a Model Master enamel color, which adheres to the rubber surface better than acrylic. The original car had white handwritten marks under each wheel. So with this step is model finished. I like that I made a lot of modifications and tried to make this model more accurate. Therefore I'm finally pleased with the result, even it is not perfect. So I hope I didn't discourage you from this kit. You can simply build it straight out of the box. In my opinion the difference will be almost negligible. So thanks for watching and see you next time. Here is the presentation of the finished model.